Please check out our sponsors NordVPN for the best in online security. It's the best VPN on the market, and you can try it risk-free now with a 30-day money-back guarantee by visiting nordvpn.com/heart and hand. That's nordvpn.com/heart and hand, and it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and as always, I am your host, and I'm joined this week by two people from opposite sides of the world. First of all, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, is the president of the North American Rangers Supporters Association, Gary Gillan. Hello, guys.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
I am good. Nice to talk to you, my friend. Nice to get you on. And there's been a lot of madness going on in the Rangers world the last few weeks, so it'll be interesting to get your take on it a wee bit away from it. And someone who was right up close and personal yesterday to it, a lot closer to home, is Cammy Bell. Hello, Cameron.
Hi, David. Hi, guys. Yes, up close and personal was certainly an interesting description for it, but a pleasure to be here as always.
So let's kick in then with the major talking point from the game. We will, of course, cover the game later, and if you don't want to hear about what went on with the protests, etc., then skip ahead. But we'll start off Saturday night. The Union Bears and the Rangers Supporters Association, which is something that seems to have been lost a little bit, but should be pointed out, it wasn't just the Union Bears, announced that they would be leaving the game on the 55th minute in protest at the way the club is being run. The Union Bears then invited, and the RSA invited other people to join them in that. In a crowd, I would estimate is kind of 35,000-ish, which already tells you how people are feeling, given that 15,000 people who had paid for the match didn't turn up for it. That the protest took place. The Union Bears left en masse. They were joined by pockets around the stadium. It wasn't anywhere close to being a full walkout. It was a minority, but it wasn't just in the Union Bears section. It was met with tumultuous booing from those who stayed. And Cammy, I couldn't see any of this, but up your end there were reports of verbals and things being thrown and whatnot, which is absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, there was a few words exchanged. I didn't see any projectiles or missiles, although I know we've heard some reports of that. There wasn't any of that. There were some quite visible arguments between some supporters. That didn't resort to fisticuffs or anything like that. But people quite clearly voicing their opinion, I think it said, on both sides of the divide. It's also fair to say as well, David, that the UB prior to walking out, obviously they were silent for the whole game. There were obviously banners put up periodically throughout the course of the first half, and it made for quite a strange and eerie atmosphere.
It did.
I'm always quick to commend the UB for doing whatever they can to be able to inject some atmosphere into the ground, but we certainly missed them. And then, as I say, people were walking out sporadically, I think it's fair to say, from different wee sections. I didn't see people leaving en masse from, particular rows or anything like that. And it's clearly it's just people who have got their own opinions in terms of where they feel there's some malfunction going on and whether or not they're going to support the current regime. But yeah, it was certainly an interesting atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, I'll just give you my tuppence worth on it. First things first, any fan who wants to protest is more than free to do so, right? And in fact, trying to do it, nobody was demanding that people protest. The Union Bears and the RSA said they were and urged others to join them. So it wasn't being told what to do. So anyone who wants to protest, it's absolutely their right to do so long as they do it peacefully, which they did. What I would say is that at the moment it's all a little bit woolly. There's no clear, demonstrable aims or objectives for it. It's talk about, we want people on the current board to leave. Okay, who and how? How are they going to go? Who's going to buy their shares, etc.? Do you want the manager sacked? Is that part of it? You want a change in management? At the moment, it's all about we want change, but that's too woolly. That's too hard to define, and people will struggle to get behind it. We all want things to be better, But just saying I want it to be better isn't a plan on how it's going to happen. So there's that. And the reaction to it yesterday. I have read a few things, and I've heard from a lot of supporters, and some people say, well, the Union Bears aren't popular, which is true. For whatever reason, there is a lot of resentment towards them, and that people were against that. But then when the banners went up, Cammy, they were cheered, they were clapped. There was loud applause for the banners. So they were Union Bears banner. If it's just that people hate the Union Bears, then why would they applaud their banners? Surely that would have got the same reaction. So I don't think it's just that. I think it's partly down to the method of the protest. There will be some that they don't like the Union Bears. But for me, what a protest needs to be about, this is what we're unhappy about, and this is what we want to achieve. The next stage in that then is, regardless of what people think, you need hearts and minds. You need people to come along with you. Because if it's a divided support, that nothing will change. Absolutely nothing at all will change. It won't happen. And calling people who disagree with you Ubers on one side and happy clappers on the other isn't going to change that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a throwback to even our days, and the Border Ranger Supporters Trust, and I remember selling memberships to the RST in Edmiston Drive, and people asking as to why I was trying to go up against David Murray. The benefit I got out of that, however, was it was a chance for discourse. And firstly, I think it's really important to remember that social media is not real life.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that we're all in our own little echo chambers there.
Yeah, and we are all involved, as I'm sure everyone listening is as well, in our own groups and circles and WhatsApp chats and everything else as well, where that does allow a chance for discourse. I think that you can't aim your vitriol towards what the Union Bears are trying to do just because it's the Union Bears. And you made a great point to say, obviously, the RSA were behind this as well. So you need to be able to try and put some of those personal opinions to one side and understand what the larger message is. So that's what I feel a lot of people were trying to do when the banners were displayed. Because I think a lot of people do agree with the sentiment, but you can't shoot the messenger. And I think the form of the protest, which is you're right to say was peaceful and done in the right way, because it could have been done in the wrong way, and that's absolutely what we didn't want to see, was also because people were like, well, you have to get behind the team and you have to do X, Y, and Z. My counterpoint to that would be, well, look at the 10 to 15,000 or so who weren't there and I think have more or less chucked going to league games because they're really pissed off at what they've seen recently, and I understand that argument as well. But if that's going to be the case, is a guy behind me on Sunday had kind of said, no, I'm staying, I'm here to support the team, then left on 80 minutes. And I'm like that. So where's your argument there? You can't blame the Union Bears for what they're looking to do just because it's the Union Bears. They are looking to be able to convey a message, and their choice of protest was their choice. I didn't boo. I would never do that to any Rangers fan who's looking to express their opinion. The problem you've got, though, David, is that when you're doing things like this and you're putting out statements, etc., there isn't a conversation. It's well, this is our point, and then that's it, and we're not willing to listen to the rest of it. And again, as we said there, you really can't have that type of conversation in a social media platform because it just becomes anonymous voices chipping in for the reason of it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, and sorry to refer to this as like an old guy, I understand that, and if it turns people off, I apologise. But when I was, doing the RST stuff, I was like, I'm right, and if you don't agree with me, you're a fanny. That doesn't change people's opinion. It makes them think you're a fanny, and actually ends up with them actively opposing you, even if you want the same things. So I don't think that's a helpful way to go. Equally, I do understand that there seems to be a bit of a split between younger people and older people, and I get that. We'll have different opinions as we get to different stages in our lives. But for me, the next key step is, Gary, okay, right, the protest there was, we're upset with the way the club is being run and we wanted to let them know, right? That's fine. You've done that. What's the next? But they've said, we're going to keep protesting. Okay, for what? To what end? Because if it's just be better, you've done that. If it's, and we want this to happen, that to happen, that to happen, I think people can then get on board with it. Then you can debate and discuss whether it's good, and you'll get converts and you'll get people doing it. If you just go, right, I've raised a flag, follow me, people are going to say, okay, but where are we going? How are we getting there?
You're exactly right, David, and I echo everything that Cammy said as well. It's, I'm completely behind anybody's right to do whatever it is they think is right, as long as it's peaceful and respectful. But for me, yes, there's not, if I could say, like a lot of substance behind this because of the stuff that you just said there, David, in terms of this is the 4 things that we want to happen in this order, and if it doesn't happen, this is what's going to be the consequence of that. There's nothing like that coming out. But for me, the timing was more, it seemed very reactive, like a lot of the things that we would be, apart from the manager, and we can maybe talk about that, a lot of the things that have been really blighting us for this season in particular, but probably manifesting itself up to and including this season, is being addressed in some, way, shape or form. We have a new chairman who, hopefully will stay, and we have a new CEO who's getting his feet under the table and trying to figure out what we're doing. He does make a statement the day before, which seemed to coincide with the RSA and the Union Bears statement, saying, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and we can just put some of these things to bed, the manager's position being one. And then they still go ahead and do it anyway. So to me, it seemed a bit pointless. It seemed a little bit petulant from my vantage point over here. I mean, obviously, I'm not living it every single day, going to work and hearing from people and such like that. But I'm still as immersed in it as I can be from 4,000 miles away. And it was just, the timing just seemed odd. Now, I understand that comes on the back of a series of, roller coaster results from the Christmas period there. But just, I don't know, it just seemed a bit disconnected from the direction that the club are trying to go in.
There is a huge disconnect. Cammy mentioned there the amount of empty seats. So straight away, there's a disconnect. And I don't know any Rangers fan that's happy with the current status quo. There's a whole range of opinions on how we're going to get better. My own personal opinion is if you are protesting with a specific aim in mind, then that's absolutely the right thing to do. And you just need to make sure that it isn't just, well, we want to be better, we're fed up being second. These are, yeah, great, okay, but how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all you're doing is protesting to make yourself feel better. And I've got experience of that. And it works. You make yourself feel better. You achieve nothing, but you make yourself feel a bit better and feel righteous and worthy and whatnot. And if people give you abuse for it, you can then start to feel like a martyr. But what anybody protest needs to do is say, we're upset because of this, right? And that doesn't mean you say because we're second and because we've no one, but you say, right, we feel that this person is wrong for the club. We feel that that person is wrong for the club. We feel the club does this and it needs to do that. And that way you have almost a manifesto and people can join up with you. And then you can debate that manifesto and you can win people round to your cause. Because otherwise what you're going to get is what you had yesterday, which was a huge divided support. And of course, that gives the board, it gives the club latitude to say, well, actually, the vast majority of people stayed and actually booed them. So therefore, they're quite happy. And it becomes counterproductive. Not only does it not help, it actually sets you back. So we'll see what happens in the future with it. But it certainly worked from a talking point of view because we're talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. It's the thing that will be remembered for this game a lot longer than the actual game itself. But we're here to talk about the game itself. And I'll start with you, Gary. Rangers yesterday taking on St Johnstone. You always text me before a game saying prediction. Yeah. And you have to admit I've been spot on lately with my somewhat downbeat predictions. And you have to admit that's true.
Well, okay.
Except the Celtic game, where my
what's he predicting for the away games, guys?
Usually the words come. He doesn't actually provide a number. Then what he does, he'll say pain or humiliation or embarrassment.
Embarrassment, yeah. And that's what I've been sending them before away games because that's how I feel going into away games, which is incidentally, by the way, why people are quite right to protest because it has been truly shocking. But we've been fine at home and we were fine again, raced into a 3-0 lead, playing really, really well. And then, as Rangers have a propensity to do, stopped. And St Johnstone are a very poor side and the game was done. but it meant that rather being the cricket score that it really should have been, because St Johnstone are a poor side, in my opinion. Their manager described their league position afterwards as catastrophic, which kind of tells you where they are. But it was a easy, routine, job done victory.
Yeah, it was, and it's just unfortunate that the biggest talking point from the second half, of course, was the protest that we just talked about there. But the first half, there was nothing wrong with the first half at all. It was chance after chance, possession. The possession ended up being a wee bit more, balanced towards the end of the game because of our second half performance. But the first half was terrific. The goals we scored were quite inventive. They were opportunistic. It was just one of these days where you're like, right, okay, it's not going to solve everything. But then if we run up a bit of a cricket score here, as you said, then that's going to be A-okay. And even at the start of the second half, it looked like we were still going to be into it. And then just after a few minutes, it just had this collective sag or sigh or whatever you want to call it from a team perspective. And then St Johnstone were kind of like, oh, all right, well, let's see what happens here. Lost another very, very poor goal from a set piece, although I thought there was a foul on Hadji at the same time. But this I said last week on the NARSA pod, like this Jekyll and Hyde team that we have within the same game is just, it's some sort of bad fantasy. It's just bizarre how the same set of players with the same set of instructions can go out and then just switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off during a game. It's very, very frustrating, especially when you finish a game like that. If you start it and then do a second half and you go away feeling a wee bit cheery, but the second half was a slog, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it really was. And look, again, if we were doing, well in the league, you take games like that, it's only St Johnstone.
Yeah.
We were too good for them. We knew we had the game won. We save our legs with a game on Wednesday. But they're in a position to try and curry favour with the supporters, and big victories are required. Cammy, 2 strikers on the park, and Rangers create a hell of a lot more chances, score goals, again with the caveat of the level of the opposition. But we did that for a wee spell in December, and we were playing well and scoring goals and actually winning away from home. And then for some reason, the manager went back on it and went back to the Bajrami and Hadji. Yesterday, Danilo came into the side. And for me, personally, Rangers should be playing with 2 strikers against every team in the Premier League, with the exception of Celtic, where, yes, because they have better players than every other team in the Premier League, you might have to take into account. So you get Bajrami sitting on McGregor. You need to do tactical things. I get that. That's fine. Same as Europe. But against teams in Scotland, we need to have 2 forwards on the park.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was my my main moan when I saw the lineups announced on Sunday afternoon. Was I don't get as to why he's doing this during a home game when we've been crying out for it for some of those terrible performances away from home. It makes such a difference. The team just looked so much more alert, I think, in the first 30 minutes, and rightly got a 3-goal lead, which came about, as you already mentioned, through not great defended by St Johnstone. I think it's going to take a minor miracle for them to stay in the division at the end of this season. But we also created our own chances, and we're unlucky with a couple of what I thought were really good fluid pieces of play. It just creates so much movement, David. It drags players away from positions where they would prefer to be and have to start following runners that they don't really want to be able to go after. I think it just looks far more settled at times when you know where certain players can be in space to be able to receive the ball and then start an attack. Czerny obviously got the second goal, but it wasn't the first time where he was literally sitting on the edge of the line of the back four, looking for a ball over the top. There was one, I think, just before he scored his chance that was unlucky. He didn't get a chance to get through to him, but I was watching him and he was literally, standing prone, ready to go. And that's because, like you say, we're able to just play with far more confidence when we've got some of that fluidity. And, we've talked about the manager back and forth for months and months now, and this is where you do scratch your head at times to wonder why we've not done this more frequently when we've absolutely had to, and how we can address some of those problems away from home. This feels to me like a solution. And my hope is that that's going to be something we're going to utilise when we eventually get to Tannadice.
Gary, A positive, a bit of light in what's been a kind of dark period has been Hamza Egerman.
Yeah.
And again, he showed yesterday another goal, an audacious overhead kick attempt, just generally good play. And we didn't do much when he went off, I thought. Not saying that taking him off wasn't the right decision, incidentally, although I don't think the substitutions helped us, but we do, have other games and you look after your assets. But I just love watching him. And it's been a wee while since we've had a player like that. The rate of his development is so impressive, but it also means that realistically, if he keeps going the way he's going, he's not going to be here that long. But my God, we'll make a few bob on him.
Absolutely. And I hope that when that happens, I hope that we learn the lessons of the past. Alfredo Morelos seems to be always the comparative player for us, and we hang on to him too long and we don't get anything for him, and then look where he is now. So it seems like he's been an absolute find. We can get critical of the recruitment policy and process that we have within the club, and then we get the odd nugget, and there's been a couple this season. Of course, with Jeffrey, I think he's been coming on leaps and bounds. Some of it, I think, is just due to necessity. Just with the fact that we need to try something, it's not working the way that it's working, the way that we were hoping it was going to work with other players or other formations. And man, has he grabbed his chance, and there is so many different dynamics to his game. I completely agree, David, that he's just a joy to watch, just one of those players. And how long has it been, quite honestly, since we've, you get that little bit of butterflies in your stomach, or that little bit of generated excitement to say, I wonder what he's going to do today, and figuring that out. And you just feel, I feel anyway, every time the ball goes up and it gets to him, there's so many different things that he can do with that ball. You're absolutely glued to what's going to happen next, because he's got a whole bunch of tricks in his bag, and it's just brilliant. I like the way that Clement addressed it last week when he got this dumb question at the I think it was the Dundee press conference, where one of the reporters said, in fact, you and I actually chatted about this, like where he said, maybe the fans shouldn't get attached because he's going to leave, and Clement just kind of shut him down by saying that's when we want to love this guy and give him all the support we need, because that's going to help everyone. It's going to help us, obviously have a bit of a hero to look towards. It's going to help him and his confidence. And it's going to let other clubs know that we're not going to just let this guy go for a song sort of thing. But just, exciting young guy, has a lot of different tricks in his locker, and just, long may it continue. Let's not cash in too early. And it seems like Clement was saying, just that there's no chance he's going right now. We'll just see what happens later on.
Patrick Stewart said that as well. No, he's not getting sold in this window, and I think unless it was a stupid money offer. The thing is, though, Cammy, you can notice the difference with players. We can talk about them in Scotland, but when they start getting talked about with Scotland, it means that eyes from bigger leagues are on him. And, of course, he got the goal against Tottenham. He's scoring in the Europa League. And people are going to take note of the rate of his development, but I still think we should be holding on to him for at least another season, because, you want to bring in assets and sell them and make a bit of money and be able to reinvest in the team. Absolutely. We all know how it works. It's not any great secret how trading models are supposed to work. But you also do need good players. It's not just about getting in money, and having a striker who can do what he can do over the course of a full year. If he gets a pre-season and next year, sky's the limit.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the balance, isn't it? I mean, you want to be able to see that player being able to come through. You want to fall in love with them. We've had too few players in recent history where we've been able to do that. The challenge is obviously, 2020 hindsight's a great thing when you're then saying, well, should we have accepted the offer from France for Morelos? And I think most people, when they saw how that story developed, with that hindsight, they said, yeah, absolutely, we should have. Egerman's a fantastic player. What I really like about him is just he doesn't hide. He will always look to be able to try and get involved. The most important thing that we can do, and you're right in saying that we need to be able to continue to develop him, but when he is putting himself in the shop window against some of the English teams, it wouldn't surprise any of us if he goes to Old Trafford and has a belter, because he's capable of it. From a personal perspective, thinking about the player himself, my hope is that he sees that he's got some huge potential, but that's a development journey he needs to take step by step. I'm certain the club will continue to support him on that, irrespective of whoever the manager happens to be, because they can see, that talent continue to nurture, and we have to be able to be protective of that. But listen, he's going to come here if we are able to trade in on him for a huge markup, then that is what we've all been crying out for, which is the execution of that player trade model that's been so absent in the last few seasons. So it is a balance. We're going to have to get used to that. We play in a league that is very accessible. If any of the big boys down south come calling, then it can be very, very tempting. My attitude towards it, David, really is let's just enjoy him while he's here, and whatever he can do for us, I'm very certain he's going to continue to try his utmost.
One way area that is a concern, Gary, is the defensive side. Now, there are reasons behind that, and that is, the injuries that we've got. Yesterday we lined up with a back four of Ridvan Yilmaz at right back, where he looks very uncomfortable. His performance against Dundee was genuinely, the word worst gets bandied about a lot, but this was a terrible performance. Yeah. Nsiala and Proper at centre back, which I don't think would be anyone's first choice, and Jeff Day, and we also, of course, have Liam Kelly in goals at the moment. Is it just a case of, unless we can bring people in, and by the way, it's mid-January and we've known about this for a few weeks, just saying, but is it a case of until we bring people in or get people back, it's just try to get through it?
I think it is. The ironic thing for me, though, is, and this is fair play, I guess, to the coaching staff, we still lose the same shitty goals as we did when all of our first team choice players were there. In terms of the set pieces, in terms of the absolute chaos that can ensue when the ball comes into the box, and we just don't seem to have that killer instinct or that genuine defensive selfishness that we've enjoyed with players in past eras and generations and such. So, yeah, I mean, Ridvan got a wee bit of praise when he went to right back first off when Tav got injured, but it's just not his position. Proper Nsiala. I thought Nsiala did okay, not under a lot of pressure yesterday, of course, against St Johnstone, but just it was good to see him confidently strolling out, making some passes. He seemed to always be looking for Jeff Day most of the time. But our defensive challenges, and I'm completely with you, David. I don't think that this transfer window was a surprise in terms of when it opens and when it closes to anybody at the club, and to be here almost halfway through and not even have like a sniff of something that's going on is worrisome. When we've got the challenges that we've got, and even before the injuries came in to Balogun and Suta, we were saying that we still needed some more defensive cover there because Proper didn't look like he was going to be the answer. I think the more game time Proper's gotten, the better he's got actually at the back there. I'm not saying he's the finished article or he's going to actually fit or suit our game here in Scotland, but he's been okay. But I think the frailties are still there, and I wasn't hugely complimentary about Jack Butland towards the end of his spell there prior to him getting injured. But man, he's a bigger presence than I gave him the credit for, because Liam Kelly is obviously a competent goalie, but I don't have the same level of confidence in him. He doesn't seem to marshal the defence that well. The 6-yard box should be his area. It's not, and he just kind of rolls around a wee bit. So yeah, it's kind of samey to me, but obviously the quality's just dipped a wee bit, because these are not the absolute first choices.
Cammy, Gary made a good point. It actually ties in with something that Stevie Clifford asked at the press conference yesterday, where he said, is Bailey Rice injured? The manager said, no, he just wasn't picked. And Stevie went, would this not have been a game where he could maybe get minutes? And you see that Nsiala played yesterday. Did all right, wasn't brilliant, wasn't awful, did okay. It'd be a good learning curve for him. That kind of proves that it is a game you can put these lads in and still win. And it's a legitimate shout, I think. If you have younger players, what are you going to learn sticking Kieran Dowell and Cyril Dessers on yesterday? Would we better sticking on, Lovelace, Finlay Curtis, Rice, those type of players?
Yeah, listen, it's a point I made on post-match pod on our Patreon site yesterday was, I do understand. I think the manager's response to Stevie was something on the lines of, well, yeah, we have to see how the game goes. We can't predict ahead of time. I think you kind of can when you're at home, and as you chaps have just discussed, yeah, it's a little bit of a kind of makeshift back four, but how much are you really going to get challenged against a team at the bottom of the league?
Who are very bad,
who are poor, yeah, for sure. But when you know that the game as a contest is done and dusted before 30 minutes, then yeah, I definitely think there's an opportunity there. And the point is exactly as you said, David, is I don't understand as to why Kieran Dowell, who I don't think anyone would lose sleep over if he wasn't a Rangers player come the beginning of February, why he's getting selected, I don't get it. If he's maybe thinking about getting some of these players into the shop window for this, for this January window, then okay, fair dues. But again, I'm not really too sure on that one, because I still think that there's other ways that you can squeeze some of those players coming in. My hope is, and I know we're jumping ahead a couple of games, but my hope is that the players that you've just mentioned will get featured against Fraserburgh, because they damn well ought to. But yeah, you want to be able to get these guys. He's mentioned that he's got these players in and around the first team training. They're involved every day. Okay, that's great. But again, I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me as to why you couldn't at least throw them onto the bench, get them in there just to say, right, well, we'll see how the game goes and we'll see how it progresses. And then when you do get to halftime and you're in a pretty comfortable state, then okay, fine, make the change at 45, which, listen, let's face it, he's not adverse to doing. And or bring them on at 60 minutes just to give them some of that experience. It doesn't really make sense to me. And he's played youth players. He brought in Robbie Fraser against Spurs, so I don't really know what his thought process is with that. But again, that's something where the manager needs to be able to come back and prove us wrong on.
And Gary, let's move on then to Patrick Stewart. He met with the press on Saturday morning, and he spoke about a number of things. Adam Thornton was there from Heart and Hand, and the first of all, the main thing that came out of it is the board are backing Philippe Clement. However, it was not unequivocal backing. He said, but we know it's a results business and results have to improve, and he wouldn't give cast iron guarantees, was his phrase, that a manager is going to be here. So I think that it was very much qualified backing the manager. He said that there's going to be an external review of how the club operate and what needs to be done by professional football consultancy. And finally said that we can maybe bring in one or two in this window. What were your thoughts on the transcripts, which are there if anyone wants to see them? They're up on our Patreon site, the full transcripts of what he said.
I thought it was as much as he could say at this point. He's obviously been drinking from the fire hose or the fire hydrant, I guess, is the best way to say it. There was obviously the review. I think we've went through certainly a series of intents about this.
Well, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but it's to back up your point. Adam actually asked, look, we've heard about reviews before in the past and they never amount to anything, nothing ever gets done. And he said, no, you're right, but they were internal reviews. This is an external reviews, independent body, no agendas, no axe to grind. They'll just tell us what's wrong and how to fix it. But I think Adam made the point, well, you can't expect fans to get excited about this because we've heard this chat before.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just in the position that he's in. He has to do what I think is right. I like the way that he referenced, especially when he was talking about the manager situation, he referenced his previous club, which is, of course, Manchester United, which are no great shakes and haven't been for a long time, despite the odd cup success here and there. So he's kind of drawing on that experience and that analogy to say, like, I have first-hand experience that you can't just completely wipe everything out and start again. I think it's all going to be good. If it comes back and there are specific, genuine foundational things that are wrong, and then you see the club making the strides to making them better, then that's fine. Quite how long that manifests itself to a successful team on the pitch is the question that the majority of us are asking, because for the most part, if you go back to 2012 and the subsequent furore that happened after that, like most of us aren't really interested in what happens in the boardroom and on the business side. We just want to see players that we know and like signing for the club, doing well for the club, and then moving on and spreading the word of Rangers as we go forward. But I think he's done what he can do, and that's kind of back to what I was saying earlier, guys, about the timing of the RSA and the Union Bears. After he's come out and said, look, this is exactly what's happening. The wording he used, I thought, was very calculated in terms of the manager's position. I can't see any, unless you had a Dundee United or Aberdeen had a resurgence and we continue to slip and drop points, and then second doesn't look like it's even guaranteed. I think that's when maybe a change would be made. But it was just one of these things. The proof is in the pudding. We need a strong CEO. We need someone who's going to make some decisions. He did mention, I think about the sporting director and such as well. So it's kind of like, what else do you expect him to say? I think the unequivocal thing about the manager was good. I didn't feel like, I didn't hear it, I just read it. It didn't feel like it was the dreaded, vote of confidence or anything like that. It was just, I'm going to put this to bed. We're not going to talk about this again until we need to talk about it, and then let's just get on with the job that we've got right now. So overall, yeah, okay. It wasn't overwhelming or underwhelming for me.
Cammy?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, I think that people got really excited when they heard that this was happening because they expected an announcement that the manager was going to be leaving. That was never going to happen. I'm all for being able to try and do impartial audits, because I'm hoping that what it'll do is it'll start to ramp up the overall quality where you get across the footballing department, which I think has been underperforming now for a number of years. And that audit will come back with recommendations and changes that have to be made. Those will likely have to be financed in some way, so it'll be interesting to see what will happen on the back of that. I think it's a transparent, update from Patrick Stewart, who is obviously still within, the first month of his job, and it's been clear that that's been part of the remit that he's either been told to do or immediately suggested when he was being discussed for the role in the first place. So, yeah, I think it can sound like, it'll feel a lot like as if we wanted immediate news and immediate action, and that hasn't happened, but it couldn't have happened. So you probably have to take in a dose of realism to that. So on the whole, I think it is good news. I think it is good news in terms of how he structured the expectations to the manager, because I think he would have got a backlash if he did come out with an unequivocal backing of the manager, which, let's face it, is pretty much paper talk. It's, akin to the dreaded vote of confidence.
It's pointless anyway, because let's face it, if Philippe Clement was to lose the next 3 games, he'd be sacked.
100%. So there's a line in the sand, which I think had absolutely had to be drawn from a board level and publicly done so. So overall, I was pleased with it, but again, I tempered my expectations that I knew it wouldn't be anything groundbreaking. I think it is welcome news, as I've mentioned, in terms of where we have to remove the inefficiency of some of our footballing department, and that needs to be looked at. I think we have done internal audits that haven't come to much of a muchness because we haven't wanted to rock the boat. This will hopefully change that, and I'll look forward to seeing what it produces.
Yeah, I mean, my take on it is, in terms of like the football review, that's fine. It's a good idea if you implement the findings. If not, it's a waste of time. But I suppose we need to wait and see on that, which goes to Gary's point. There's not going to be any immediate comes out of this. The manager, I've mentioned this before, my opinion hasn't changed. I think there comes a point where it's too far gone. I think we've reached that. We'll need to wait and see, but I don't think he'll be in charge next year, barring us improving dramatically between now and the end of the season, or doing something incredible like winning the Europa League. I just don't see it, because at the end of the day, they need to go for renewals, and I go back to 15,000 people not there yesterday. That's the kind of thing that does force change. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Right, Gary, before we finish up for today, what's happening with NARSA?
Well, NARSA we are officially today 149 days away from the start of the NARSA convention in Kissimmee in Florida. And I have to say that the ticket sales for this particular convention have been very surprising to both myself and the NARSA executive overall, because they're just not as strong as we anticipated that they were going to be, especially for the location. Typically, Florida and Vegas are our more popular destinations, and the other ones, we get what we get depending on where it is and when it is. And I was actually talking to Brian Campbell, the NARSA VP, about this last night. And it's certainly it's slower than it's ever been in my 13 years with the NARSA executive, and I just wonder that if the goodwill has ended in terms of people just utterly, literally fed up with investing in Rangers Football Club, which is what they see this as. It's an extension of their fan experience, and you get to a point where you just say no more, and that seems to be reflected in the overall ticket sales, which is obviously a bit of a worry, because we make commitments a couple of years in advance about what we anticipate the numbers and such to be. We've gone about our advertising as we typically do, and it's not yielding the results that we're hoping for. So what I'm hoping to do, in fact, what we're actually planning and intending to do in January and leading into the early part of February, is really go on a big drive to say, if you're genuinely coming, because I've spoke to people who have said, yep, I need to I'll get onto that and figure out, book the tickets. And I'm like, well, can you book the tickets then? Because if we know how many people are coming, then we know how much operating cash we have to be able to enhance the event and make it, an absolutely worthwhile experience, which it will be, of course, for everyone coming over. But I think it's just a symptom, obviously, or honestly, I should say, of where we are as a fan base for this particular period of time. And I don't know what that means as we move forward, but we're still very much looking forward to it. Rangers have been very complicit in helping us with the marketing and really, really supporting that, both at the stadium and in the museum and the Rangers shop and stuff like that. In the programme, the match day programme, we're going to get some pitch side LED support from early February onwards as well. Working very hard with Experience Kissimmee and with the host hotel, which is the Omni at Champions Gate, and it's called Omni Orlando, but it's actually in Kissimmee for some reason. But yeah, it's one of these weird scratch your head things to say, what's going on here? And I honestly think the fans are just fed up.
People are just pissed off, and understandably so. So, right, Rangers, get your fucking finger out on and off the park.
Yeah.
I think is the message that has been, no matter how it's being sent, no matter if it's by people leaving in 55 minutes or people just not going, or people even in the stadium, get your fucking finger out, Rangers, would appear to be the message. So if there's one thing that comes out of this pod today, I hope it's that. Right. Thank you very much to the boys for joining me today. First of all, to Cammy.
A pleasure, my friend. Thank you for the time.
And to Gary.
Always a pleasure, David. Great to chat to you and Cammy again, and thanks very much for the opportunity.
And thanks to our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. If you want to hear more from Heart and Hand, go to patreon.com/Heart and Hand. There's loads and loads of great content over there for you, not just on football, but if you want your Rangers felt as well as other things, there is plenty there for you. I will be back next week here after we play at the weekend. Cammy will be here on Thursday after Rangers take on Aberdeen at Ibrox on Wednesday with Heart and Hand Extra. So until then, folks, have a splendid week. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.